And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook. It is Sunday, April 28th, and this outlook is for Monday and Tuesday as we start a new week. Well, weather systems, pretty quiet weather pattern overall across much of the state of Alaska. It's kind of that time of year. It's normally our driest time of year. Low pressure moving away from the southeastern Gulf and scooting down along the North Pacific well off the British Columbia coast. A few lingering showers around the area Sunday. We're going to see more in the way of clearing, things drying out for Monday. Across the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf, we have just weak weather systems in place here. Along the Gulf, over the mainland, little weak ridges of high pressure, little weak areas of low pressure. So in that kind of regime, we would expect more localized winds to develop throughout the day, whereas you could see some sea breezes along areas of the Gulf. And inland, we do have a little area of thermal troughing due to just a little warmer temperatures from east central back into northwest Canada. But Monday morning, we do expect IFR along areas of the southwest coast, the YK deltas, including Nunavik Island, and just south of the Alaska Peninsula, and then way out to the west. Far western Aleutians, southwest corner of the Bering Sea, that is going to be impacted by a low pressure and frontal system out that way. For Monday afternoon, though, a lot of VFR conditions throughout the mainland, maybe some MVFR there at Adigan and Anatuvik passes, some MVFR conditions out over the Gulf, but generally the Panhandle and all through much of the mainland, VFR will rule. IFR conditions, though, way out toward the far western Aleutians associated with that low and frontal system. By Tuesday morning, notice the IFR conditions there across the lower portion of the Bering out into the central Aleutians associated with that front. General MVFR out over the Bering Sea and up through the Gulf. Could be some pockets of MVFR along areas of Cook Inlet and in some of the channels here of the Panhandle, but otherwise the mainland interior, VFR conditions prevail through Tuesday. And again, extending down into the southeast Panhandle. The only area of IFR extends out through the central eastern Aleutians along that frontal band and extending back across the lower half of the Bering Sea. So past conditions, some MVFR conditions due just some cloudiness, a little lower ceilings hanging around Anatuvik and Adigan passes. As we go down around the Alaska range, it's pretty easy. Lake Clark and Merrill, all the way rounding up through Rainy, Windy Pass, eastward through Isabel and Mentasta passes. VFR conditions will be the rule there throughout the Alaska range on Monday. Down across the Copper River Basin, VFR, Tanita Pass, and then finally, even along getting close to Prince William Sound there, Portage Pass, VFR for Monday. And then finally, as I mentioned, the Panhandle will be drying out. A few lingering showers there this Sunday, moving out Monday. So VFR, Chilkoot and White, and especially extending downward all the way to Ketchikan and Metlakatla. Freezing levels Monday morning, they bump up a little bit above 4,000 feet over the western half of the Gulf. A little pocket in the southern portion of the Yukon Territory. And then behind me, this is where there's a more notable ramping up of the freezing levels aloft, upwards of 6,000 and 8,000 feet out through the western Aleutians. And then south of the central Aleutians, we find freezing levels above 10,000 feet. The surface freezing line does dip down south of St. Matthew and Nunavik Island Monday morning, and then extends upward into parts of the southwest interior, and then along areas of the south central into the coast, and then back through the inner channels of the Panhandle. And the icing threats are pretty nominal. There could be a few light showers and in some of those clouds, 40-mile Gold Country down into the, say, Wrangell, St. Elias Mountains, and also along the central and south slopes here of the Brooks Range. Not really anything to be too concerned about. Better chance of some moderate icing above 6,000 feet is south of the Alaska Peninsula. And as we get back out toward that frontal system and low pressure, way out toward the western Aleutians above 8,000 and 10,000 feet south of there. And looking at winds aloft, fairly light winds across northwest Canada and the mainland. You got to go way out to the west. There's a trough just off the left side of your screen. And aloft, we find some winds in excess of 100 knots. As we bring it down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, again, winds aloft in the mid-levels, pretty light across Across much of the mainland in through the southeast, strongest wind field is again out there toward the southwestern portion of the Bering Sea and far western Aleutians, and then bringing it down to 3,000 feet. This is where we find the winds. Now, the lower level winds here along the Gulf Coast and areas of the interior will be driven by the diurnal cycle, the freeze-thaw, daytime heating, cooling at night. So sea breezes and different land valley type winds will exist across the interior and along the Gulf Coast in through the Panhandle along the West Coast. But here out to the west, this is a stronger system. It has a broad belt of 50 to as high as 65, 70 knot winds out of the southeast south. And as a result, really the only area of significant turbulence will be way to the west. There could be a little pocket of some isolated moderate turbulence off of the west-southwest portion coastline here of the Panhandle, surface to 5,000 feet, but by far you get out the central Aleutians, Adak westward, especially through Shimia and Attu area, you could see some isolated severe turbulence. There surface to 3,000 feet on Monday.